tutorial session. I'm Byon from University of Michigan. Before starting my presentation, I'd like to thank Professor Eugene at Texas A&M. This session is originally organized by Professor Eugene, but he kindly offered me this opportunity to speak together. So Professor Ding and I started this research on wind power systems in 2006. So it has been a decade. Time flies so fast. So this work, we started this work when I was a second-year PhD student, and at that time, very few people studied the wind power systems. There could be many different reasons. Maybe at that time, people were not quite sure whether wind will grow or not, as they are expected. And also, the industry people at that time were not very willing to share their data with the people in academia because they didn't really realize the importance of the data analytics. But I guess nowadays, data is accumulated, and they know the importance of the data analytics to improve their design and operations of wind power systems. So even in this WindForms conference, I see some people already started their research in wind power systems. So I hope this session gives some useful insights and implications into how the data can be useful for improving the wind farm performance, even at the design stage or operation stage. So we have three major parts. We will first talk about what kind of data is available in wind power systems. And in the second part and third part, we will discuss how this data can be used to evaluate the performance of wind power systems. And here the performance can be the power generation efficiency, also it can be the reliability. So first we will discuss the data. So different from the conventional power systems that are operated in stationary conditions, wind turbine systems operated in non-stationary conditions because the wind changes over time. So the performance of the output of wind turbine or wind farm, which is why this has this stochastic nature, and also this depends on the condition of wind. So here, P of x is the probability density function of x, and the output of wind turbine or wind farm depends on the condition of x. So all this, for example, the wind power production, this probabilistic wind power production can be expressed as the integration of the conditional PV performance. So here x, throughout this presentation, x denotes the vector of weather-related conditions. It can include wind speed, wind direction, turbulence intensity, or any other environmental variables. And y is the turbine response. It can be turbine output, or it can be some measure that it can be some response output that measure the reliability of turbine. And p denotes the probability density function. So here, this problem of solving, and of course, if we know the density function, either py or the conditional density function, then the problem is easy. However, in many cases, this conditional density function is unknown. So some of the problems, research problems, focus on how we can characterize this conditional density. And another problem is to model px, because the wind field can be different, heterogeneous over the area. So this can be known as the spatial temporal analysis of problem. And combining this px and then conditional density of y given x into py means some numerical integration, because oftentimes this density doesn't take the corresponding expression. This is the simple anatomy of the wind turbine. I guess many of you already know how the wind is converted to electrical energy, but just in case. So when wind blows, this rotor, this blades change, they rotate, so the kinetic energy in wind is converted to the mechanical energy. And then this rotation energy is accelerated through the gearboxes, and then this mechanical energy is again converted to the electrical energy through the generator. And here we do have two control systems. One is the pitch control that changes the blade angle. The other is the yaw control that changes the whole rotor blade. So this whole rotor plane can change depending on the wind direction. And there is a tower, and we also have an anemometer that measures the wind condition, the wind speed and direction. And we will discuss some of the measurements available in wind power systems. So we have measurements at the turbine and also at the main mast. So in the turbine level, as I said, this is the blade and this is called the nacelle. And above the nacelle, there is an anemometer which has sensors to measure wind speed and direction. So this nacelle measures the wind flow, but this nacelle here, this anemometer measures the wind flow after this turbine consumes energy. So this measurement is the downwind conditions. And we have a wind power output from each turbine. And also, depending on the data set, sometimes we have load, mechanical load or structural load on some turbine subcomponents like a blade or shaft. And we also, the main mast data, so in a wind farm, there are several main mast or single main mast that try to measure the free flow wind speed. So this main mast measures the wind speed and direction at multiple heights. So here, this is the height from nacelle to the ground is called hub height, and main mast measures the wind conditions at hub height. And depending on some data set, we have measurements at different heights. And also, this main mast includes other environmental conditions like humidity, air density, and temperature. For offshore turbines, this main mast also measures the wave heights.
Thank you. My name is Eunshin. I'm the co-presenter of this session. And this is one of the wind farm layout. We received the data from one of the collaborators. This wind farm has about the size of 16 miles in the east-west direction and 9 miles from the south-north direction. And on this particular wind farm, this is an onshore or inland wind farm. Typically, I like to use inland wind farm rather than onshore because this is far away from the shore. It's pretty much in parallel. And it has about 200 plus wind turbines on site. And there's only 4 mast tower. And typically for wind farm, there's very few of them main tower. And regularly from 1 to a couple of them. And in this particular one, there's a 4 mast site. And therefore, from the spatial density point of view, the anemometer on the wind individual wind turbine measures wind speed and wind direction on a very high spatial density. But their accuracy is not really particularly guaranteed because the international standard right now doesn't really require the wind operator to certify or to certify periodically the sensors on the wind turbine. It's very costly to do so. Okay, so they basically said we need to do so for the mast. Okay, the mast measurement is arguably more accurate than the turbine. And we did a preliminary study. We actually take one of the wind turbine and compare with the very nearby the mast for a period of time for the wind speed measurement. And we find they're only about 215 meters apart. And there's about 20% difference between the wind speed measurement. Okay? So this measurement really constitutes a set of the multi-fidelity data of the complementary trace. One thing is more accurate, another one is more dense. Okay, so which one are you going to use? Which is not very straightforward to answer. Okay? And also for the temporal resolution part, when the data was collected, they also, the original data, usually people in industry call it historian data, is in high frequency, and depends on the sensor capability, the high frequency can be going like 1 data point per second, and typically it's about the 7 or 8 measurement per minute. If you do this kind of measurement, if there's no missing data, and if you do that for the whole year, you're going to have about the 4.4 million data pairs. The X, both X and Y. The Y is the power output or the mechanical load for the whole year. However, in the most of the use of the SCADA data and in the wind industry, is the data has been averaged in 10 minutes. Okay, and this is called 10 minutes data. And still, if you look at the new IEC standard, they still recommend this 10 minutes data because the 10 minutes data kind of are on a certain kind of stochasticity and non-stationary from that 10 minutes. And then assume in the 10 minutes is relatively stable, so you can use summary statistics to represent that. So by using the 10 minutes data, of course, you reduce that data temporal resolution to to a large extent. And for 1 year without no missing data, we only have about 50,000 data points, a little kind of over 50,000 data points. Okay. And then this is like a sort of a spatial temporal wind field plot. And we use a different kind of color code because very toward the red, the yellow-red direction is a higher wind, and to the blue direction is kind of low wind. And if you look at the whole field, and there's at a different time. This is 1 day in one of the months. So January representing the winter, April representing the spring, July representing summer, and also October representing fall. And you can see the wind changing over the time. And of course, you can do this kind of on the hourly or monthly or basis, different kind of time basis, and you see how that changes. Okay, one of the things sometimes people do notice, in addition to the wind does change from season to season, okay, and because the summer really is like the low wind period, and they also see this kind of unevenness of the wind field, and usually the people call that kind of the hot spot, okay, and in this particular case, this hot spot actually is low wind, okay, and is this hot spot, what is the reason for this hot spot to be created? It's not because of the wake effect and the turbulence being concentrated to a certain kind of area. Identify the hotspot actually is useful to identify certain kind of insight to the turbine operation and even the farm planning, this kind of things. Okay. So in order to gather all the information, extract the information from this kind of special temporal data, I think that is one of the challenges over there. So you actually have 3 dimensions to go, right? The x and y and also time evolving over the time. Okay. The common set of the elements, because we talk about both of the x and y. The y, as Eunshin mentioned, it could be electricity output, power output, could be mechanical load. Okay, generally we consider one at a time. The common set of x, the wind speed, of course, is one of the things need to be considered. This is probably arguably the most influential factor for the wind power generation. Okay, and typically the wind speed is measured as the hop height. Okay, hop height wind speed. When we set wind speed without further notification, it's really the hop height wind speed. Okay, and also wind direction is also the hop height. Okay? And the air density was not directly measured, but it's really measured the temperature and the pressure, and using this standard formula, converting that to the air density. Okay. Humidity can be directly measured. The turbulence intensity is the standard deviation of the wind speed measured in that minute and divided by the average of that minute's wind speed. Okay. So for people familiar with the statistics, this is really no different from the coefficient of variance in statistics. But it has this physical interpretation in the fluid dynamics or air dynamics kind of field. This is called turbulence. And to some extent, this average in the 10 minutes really, other than other things, the wind speed and the turbulence is used the first 2 moments to summarize the whole information in that 10 minutes. Okay? The wind shear, here when we talk about is really the vertical wind shear. Okay, so you need a kind of 2 measurement at different height to calculate the wind shear. So at a different kind of height, H1, H2, and then you have different measurement of the V1, V2, you do this kind of calculation, get the wind shear. Okay? And if you have multiple sensors, one at the hop height, another is below hop height, you can calculate the below hop wind shear. If you have another above the hop height, you have above hop wind shear. Right now, I think it's not very easy for you to measure the horizontal wind shear, which sometimes is still needed. Okay, you need to have some kind of new sensor like a LiDAR in front of the wind turbine to measure the whole spectrum of the wind field to calculate the horizontal wind shear. Most of the time, for the commercial wind farm, this kind of measurement are not very commonly available. Okay? So, generally speaking, there's 6 variables, and depends on the availability of sensors. This can be expanded and can be shortened to some extent. And for example, the wind speed can be included at a different kind of height. And also, we use the turbulence to measure the variability of the wind speed. But people also use the wind veer, which is the variability of wind direction. Okay, we didn't include this one here for the reason because when we initially worked with one particular wind operator, they didn't really mention the importance of the wind swing. So this is one of the dangers for us as data scientists to work on one particular engineering problem. We need to rely on their engineering knowledge to kind of guide us, the subject matter, and what is the most important things to look at. Okay? And in wind industry, if Y is the power output, and people oftentimes use this kind of power curve, right? One-dimensional functional relationship connecting the wind speed and with the power output to characterize how wind turbine perform. Okay? So it has this kind of cut-in wind speed, usually is around like 3 meters per second, and before that, or lower than that, and people believe it's not very worthwhile to really start a wind turbine. Okay? And then the cut-out speed is usually 25 meters per second. That's a very strong wind. And beyond that, people believe if you're still operating the wind turbine, there's a good chance your wind turbine could be damaged. So they kind of apply a mechanical brake and stop the wind turbine at that speed. So it's called cut-off. And then when the wind starts blowing harder, and of course the wind turbine generates more and more power, until to this VR, which is called rated wind speed. And around that time, the pitch control kicks in, and then they usually rotate the wind blade to be more kind of parallel of the wind direction to absorb less kinetic energy from the wind. And therefore, the kind of the level of this level of output is called Y sub R is called rated power for the wind turbine. Okay? And so this kind of nonlinear relationship. Now the complexity of this nonlinear relationship is, in some of the simplified model, they use the cubic function to describe that. Actually, it's not exactly a cubic function. Okay, we'll come back to that point a little bit later. But if you look at this kind of real data collected from the wind field for one particular wind turbine, from wind speed and wind power, you find, depends on where you're going to draw that line. And it could be probably quadratic or more than quadratic or more than cubic. Okay? And so it's not very easy to use one particular parametric function to characterize the whole thing. Okay? But nevertheless, if you can characterize by using a power curve, and the power curve here is dominated by power curve there, and of course the dominating power curve indicates a higher production efficiency. Okay, that means given the same wind speed, they always produce more power under that kind of condition. Okay? So if we summarize the wind data by using Y as a power, on the very left side of this panel, you can see it's really, we kind of arrange this data in the 3-dimensional plot. Every cross-section here is one of the snapshots of the data we observe from the wind farm. So you have multiple different locations, you have both turbines and also the mast. And on this horizontal direction, there's a time series. If you take one of the particular wind turbine, and now you can kind of to plot all this kind of data over the time. Okay, and by taking out this snapshot, also if you take one of the particular wind turbine, for example, 240 here. And then if you plot this power curve, and then you will see this relationship between input and output. Of course, later on we're going to argue this particular type of power curve is a simplified version of the reality. Okay, it's used broadly, but it's not particularly very accurate for you to do decision making afterwards. And this is really what we use the Y as output, as a power output. Okay. But if you use a Y as a bending moment, and now you have a different set of data.
So if we consider the reliability, then we need to use the sensors that measures the force, wind force on the turbine systems. And particularly here, we consider the structural reliability. So in the blade side, there are several sensors that can measure the force on the blade root. And depending on the direction, they can be clockwise bending moment or edgewise bending moment. We can also consider the tip deflection on the blade tip. And here in the shaft, also we can consider the force on the shaft, which is measured by shaft bending moment and also shaft torque. For the offshore turbines, people also consider the push or the tower, because offshore turbines cannot be installed on the solid ground, so we can measure tower bending moment in different directions, and also the tower torsion. And so here we can consider the reliability, and at the design stage, the turbine designers want to estimate the extreme load. So which means here this is the probability density function of y. Again, this y, the turbine output is stochastic, so we do have probability density function, and we want to avoid any structural failure or mechanical failure. To do so, the failure probability should be very small. So they pre-specify the failure probability at the very small level. For example, the international standard asked the turbine designer to limit the failure probability below this 3.8 times 10 to the minus 7, which is very small. So to satisfy this failure probability, the resistance level should be determined. That is the extreme load. So if the turbine satisfies this extreme level, then somehow we can satisfy the very small failure probability. And the task is to estimate this extreme load or mathematically extreme quantile for 20-year design life or 50-year design life, given the observations we have. And these observations can come from the data from the campaign, short-time campaign, or this can be coming from the stochastic simulation tools. And because the campaign data is very expensive, so at the initial design stage, people rely on stochastic simulations. And there are two major organizations in the wind industry. One is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in the United States. The other is the Denmark Rizzo National Laboratory. And both of the organizations developed the aeroelastic simulation codes to help wind designers to design wind reliably. And the simulation codes from NREA is publicly available, so we use those simulators in our research. In these simulators, the input is the wind condition, such as 10-minute average wind speed and the turbulence intensity. Then there are several series. There are a set of simulators. Here, the top sim generates three-dimensional stochastic wind profile given this input, and then this another simulator called FAST and aerodynamic takes the input of top sim and generates the structural or mechanical loads like a flat bending moment, edgewise bending moment, tip deflection, and shaft bending moment, and so on. So we can use this simulation data to estimate the failure probability or to estimate the extreme load at the design stage. So the most simplest way is just to use the crude Monte Carlo simulation, CMC. We can just sample wind speed from the original wind speed distribution. The international standard asks designer to use some specific wind speed distribution, which is a Rayleigh distribution. So we can sample wind speed from that distribution and then run the simulator, top sim, FS, aerodynamic, and then we can just collect the load response and count the event, the failure event, which is this load exceedance event. Whether Yi, the output, is greater than the resistance level or not. But the problem is this, given the failure probability, given the very small failure probability, if we just use this crude Monte Carlo simulation, then this is computationally very, very expensive. So actually, people in the civil engineering and national lab, they use this crude Monte Carlo simulation, and they use the like 1,000 cores to simulate the outputs. So if we just use the regular desktop, then to simulate 10,007 outputs, it takes like about 1 month. So if we consider different types of designs, then this crude Monte Carlo simulation is not a feasible solution. And also, more importantly, not only the computational wise, but the result is quite uncertain, because to have one failure output, we need to run 10 to the 7 simulations. So the output is quite uncertain, meaning if we have output from 10 to the 7 simulations, and also we have another output from 10 to the 7 simulations, this output can be quite different. So when we estimate the extreme load, our estimation will not be very precise. So some more like sophisticated tools should be necessary.
So this is one of the slides of the last slide of the last the first part, and we kind of summarize the data characteristic and the kind of different kind of spatial resolution, different accuracy, measurement frequency, different sources, physical, electricity, and even computer simulation data. And but on the other hand, we are able to. You mentioned about initially doing the work. Actually, we kind of doing the work for a couple of years in the data-free type of mode. And but later on, we actually were able to collect a large amount of data from the actual wind farm operation from national labs. So we have overall more than 100 gigabytes data we have right now. We can do actually a lot of things. We also negotiate with some of the data providers, try to ask them for us to release some of the data to kind of let the academic community to use the data. But many times that's kind of a painful process because we sign the NDA almost every time to get the data, and we need to kind of let them to let us to somewhat to go around that NDA. But this set of the data actually is still a subset of the data involved in the wind energy application. Because they are by and large related to the engineering side of the data. Okay? Sometimes I was joking with students and people in the field. The data easiest to get is really the God-created data. The better data, right? It's not human-created data. Okay? That probably doesn't, it belongs to all of us. So you actually get that kind of data without much of a cost. You probably need to go through some procedure, but more or less it's public data. And then engineering could create the data, for example, the power data, and usually you need a signed NDA. Right? But beyond that, there's a cost data. It's accountant-created data. It's harder to get. The people usually don't want to release the data. So far, we don't have any kind of data directly related to a company's cost propagation and their cost of operation. And then beyond that, there's a lawyer use the data. Okay, you can forget about that for the time. Okay, so that kind of explains the complexity of the data involved in the wind energy application. Before we go to the second part, the second and third part basically, I will present one of the case study related to Y equal to a power, and Eunshin is going to present a study why it's a bending moment of the mechanical load. Before we proceed to that, I just want to see if the audience has any questions on the data aspect of the wind energy application. Yes, sir.
I have a question. When you were mentioning using the multi-part solution to get the extreme values, you need to know the distribution of the wind speed. How do you normally get that distribution?
It's a really good question. So this wind speed density computation has this probability of x, and the international standard already give the density function. So they asked the turbine designer to use some specific density, and that density is the waveline density. And they also provide the parameters of the waveline density function. In reality, we can use the wind speed distribution at specific turbine site, and usually wind speed is publicly available. And before they commission the wind farm, they measure the wind speed for some methods, so they can they can have the wind speed distribution.
Any other questions on the data aspect? Okay, I will try to cover the second part in 25 minutes. I set a timer for myself. I found, staying in academia for 15 years, I found the tendency to kind of overspeak. I don't remind myself, I never stop. So this is a problem related to the power curve. And as I mentioned, that very nice, clean, thin power curve, and usually it's called nominal power curve from the OEM, never really materialized in reality. In the reality, it's always messier, and the data you have has much wider variability. For example, if you take 10 minutes per second wind speed, this particular wind turbine can produce the wind power pretty much from 500 kilowatts all the way to nearly the top. We kind of purposely kind of hide the top because that's one of the computational information we're not supposed to release. But you can see this is 2500 already. The top is like beyond that, right? From 500 all the way to about 2500 kilowatts. So that's really large of the variability. Okay, and now you basically said I use one of the line represent the whole thing. You're going to have very large variability. Nevertheless, the practitioners routinely use the power curve to compare the turbine performance, and the reason is really different from the traditional power generator, and which you can by and large control the input. You can compare the output directly for the wind turbine and as well as for solar energy. For ocean wave, this kind of renewable energy source, you cannot really control the input. Okay, so there's no way for you just to compare the power. And because when the power is bigger, it could be the wind turbine is different. It could be because the wind blows differently. Okay, so you have to use at least the power curve with one input dimension. What we try to argue is that's not enough. Okay, you can do a whole lot better if you can incorporate other kind of factors. As a matter of fact, what we advocate is multi-dimensional power curve. Once you do that, once you incorporate the important environmental factors, what you have in the end is a system-level formal metric which can measure the turbine's intrinsic aerodynamic characteristic. So basically, you have two factors going in. One is how well the turbine performs by itself. Another is how much is influenced by the external factor. If you control for the external factor, what the residual or the remaining effect is really kind of testified to the turbine's own performance. Okay, that's the basic promise. Okay. So just quickly to kind of explain the IEC. The IEC is the international standard body governing the wind energy industry. So they recommended the use of non-parametric method, which we named it Byon method. The IEC didn't really give the method any kind of name. We call that Byon method because it's really kind of method of beams. So what it does is we take the kind of input here, and this is the wind speed versus the power. You cut the wind speed input into small beams. For example, 0.5 meters per second. Okay? For each one of them, if you amplify that for each one of the beam, you simply average all the power output from that beam, and you get this average. You get all these kind of blue dots, you get another average. Okay? For this beam, you use that average the power output to represent the power output field. So you basically have a series of these dots. And now you can do a little bit kind of smoothing, and then you get the power curve. Okay? By and large, the Byon method, it looks very simple, but it's also very popular. It's been dominating the whole wind energy industry for the past decade. Okay? For good reason. Okay? Because this problem is not easy. Okay? And as we argued, it's not really a parametric. It's not really non-parametric. It depends on which part you're going to just kind of try to model. It has a different kind of parametric form. Okay? So the Byon method is very adaptive. Okay? It doesn't really rely on a lot of assumptions. The people understand the wind power, the physical relationship with this wind speed is going through this kind of simple relationship. Okay? On the first glance, they feel the power is simply just a cubic function of wind. The complexity is really here. This C of P is not a constant. The C of P actually is a function of wind speed, the wind direction, and air density at least. There's probably something else. The problem is nobody really knows what kind of closed form the C of P can be expressed in the other environmental factor. Okay, and that kind of complicated the whole thing. Okay, so the Byon method and basically provide a simple solution to handle this kind of complexity and to get this non-parametric method to adapt to the complexity you're going to run into in your real application situation. Okay. So what is the limitation of the Byon method? The limitation, of course, we can start with saying it's not very smooth, right? It's a beam, so it has this kind of discontinuity. That's not really a major problem. You can always smooth that curve a little bit. Okay? The biggest problem is really it doesn't really handle the high dimensionality very well. And not only high dimensionality, even multiple dimensionality problem very well. If you think about these things, if you have one variable, right? The one variable has 20 beams. Okay? If you have 1,000 data points to start with, and each bins have 50 data points. That's good enough, right? You can do an average with 50 data points easily, right? And then if you have two variables, each one of them is being 20 bins. And then you have suddenly 400 bins. With 1,000 data point, you will have only 2 data points, 2.5 data points left each bins. Okay? Have 3 variables. Each one of them have 20 bins. You have 8,000 bins. Okay? And we said for the 10 minutes data for the whole year, you have 50,000 data points. But if you have 5 variables, each variable is being 20 intervals, you're going to have 3 million bins for that 5-dimensional input space. And in the end, you have 30 bins on average to share 1 data point. And then eventually you cannot really apply that binning method anymore. So this is called the curse of dimensionality. And then when you kind of bin the data, the binning method is a very local method. They kind of, when the binning method tries to estimate particular bins, they don't really care about other bins. Okay, so they only use the information in that particular bin, and then without necessarily to borrow stress from the other part. So it's not very efficient either. It's very adaptive. It's very local. On the other hand, it's not very efficient. That also contributes to the problem in the high-dimensional case. The generation of the bins is also a problem, right? Well, one time when I was giving a presentation in Rizzo National Lab, I have one of the persons in the audience. He has been playing with the binning method in the past 20 years. And he said every time we still kind of struggle to say how we're going to decide the bin size, and whether or not it's a kind of constant bin size, it's an adaptive bin size, and it's a constant bin size, how wide the bin is going to be. Okay? So all this kind of problem, they are contribute to the problem of the limitation of the binning method. In summary, we will say the binning method focuses too locally, spend the time resource unwisely, and run into this curse of dimensionality. Now, from the methodology point of view, actually, this is the struggle between this local method with the global method is not really new, right? This is kind of the spectrum of different kind of method, going from very global to very local. The global method, for example, the regression model with the global support, and it's a very global method. This kind of method uses very few parameters, very scalable. The response surface is guaranteed to be smooth. On the other hand, they are not very adaptive to the local feature. Okay? If you have a very highly nonlinear features, non-stationarity, they're going to miss that. On the other hand, the binning method is very, very local, and they are very adaptive, very flexible. On the other hand, they are not very scalable. They are inefficient in terms of using data. The discontinuity on the boundary sometimes also causes a problem. Okay? So what we try to do here, again, go back to the very beginning of the problem formulation. What we try to do here is actually focus on this particular part of estimate the power curve is related to the conditional density. Okay? The power curve in our case is the conditional expectation. If we have x is only the wind speed input, this conditional expectation is exactly the power curve estimated by the binning method. Okay? But when we have multiple power curve, that becomes the multiple dimension power curve or power response surface. Okay? What we do here, the basic idea is we use another non-parametric method. It's called kernel method to handle this kind of problem. Okay? So I first explain what is the kernel method. The simple kernel method, they use a different kind of window. This is a Gaussian method. It's a smoothing kernel. Compared with the binning method, actually fundamentally they are not that much different. The binning method, you can consider that it's a step function window, so it's not continuous. Every data point falling into that window, you give this kind of equal weight. Therefore, you have a simple average. Every data point outside the window is of give 0 weight. And for the kernel function, you basically have different kind of weight. So you have a weighted average for whatever is falling into that window. And for the data point outside the window, of course, you give the 0 weight. And for the Gaussian kernel function, it's kind of exponentially decay to 0. But beyond certain kind of weights, the weight is beyond certain kind of weights, the weight is effectively 0. Right? This generates one of the difference, but the difference doesn't really produce enough difference in the output If you look at by using the Byon method and the one-dimension simple kernel to analyze the same set of data, you do see the Byon method and produce a different method result from the kernel method. But the difference is not that large. It's not that large. So the bigger difference is still when you go from one dimension to multiple dimensions. Okay? So when you go to one dimension to multiple dimension, you're going to use this multivariate kernel. Okay? So the multivariate kernel, this is one of the existing kernel method has been around for many, many years. The top part of that is really the conditional density estimator. The bottom part of that is the conditional expectation estimator. So what they do here is using this weighted function as a linear combination of the y, and then use that as the output. Okay, the density, the difference is really they use this kernel function as their density because we use the Gaussian kernel, and that's naturally to be a choice of the input for the density estimator. And then for this weighted function is coming from this kernel function, which is a multiplication from the first variable, the second variable, and all, how many variables you're going to have. Okay, so if this is the first day, it's a wind speed, the wind direction, and so forth, and you're going to have this kind of multiplicative kernel function you're going to use. Now, we don't want to use that directly. Okay? If we use that directly, we're going to run into the same problem as we use the Byon method. Okay, because you cannot really avoid how you're going to make use of the data. As long as you want to capture the multi-dimensional factor interaction, you need to have that much data to cover that kind of high-dimensional space. Okay? So using multivariate kernel method in its traditional way will again run into the curse of dimensionality problem, just like Byon. Okay? So what we do is we try to balance these things. Okay? And even for other methods, like the Bayesian adaptive regression tree, and also the SS spline model, this is the smooth spline ANOVA model. We also compare it in the paper. And they try to, when you kind of scale up in the high dimensional case, they run into similar situations. Right? So our solution comes from the, kind of understanding, again, come from this physical law. And by looking at the physical law again, at least we have observed three things. Number one, at least the three important factors you have noticed, right? One is the wind speed, okay? And another is air density, okay? Another one is not shown here. A here is really the sweep area of the wind, the rotor blade. And that area doesn't change. Once you put a wind turbine over there, and that area is a constant, okay? So you don't really, you cannot really change that A. Another factor is actually inside of the C sub T, is the wind direction. Okay? And people said, why should you care about wind direction since you have the yaw control, which you point the turbine from wherever the wind comes from? The problem is that yaw control is not precise. Okay? And even you have the yaw control, and the empirical studies still show by taking into consideration of the wind direction, you can reduce the power production error by a significant amount. Okay? And this could be because of the current control mechanism is not accurate enough. It could be because the yaw control doesn't really change as fast as the wind speed change or wind direction change. Okay? Because the wind structure is a huge structure, and each of the turbine blade could be weighed as heavy as 16 tons. So altogether, it's like almost 50 tons.
Is that wind direction? Is the kind of like angle between the wind direction and the blade plane?
The wind direction measured on the wind turbine is by that particular sensor. So it's not particular the wind direction to that blade, but it's basically depends on where the blade is located. You can recalculate that to that. Okay. It's not very easy to recalculate that, so you just directly use that wind blade. Okay. The one directly affect the wind power generation should be attack angle. Okay. There's no sensor directly measure that attack angle. Okay. So you just measure the wind direction. So that should affect the power of the generation efficiency. The second part is really the functional relationship is non-linear, but the function form is unknown. We don't really know what kind of form it's going to form. So how do you use some kind of non-parametric method? The third thing is there's an interaction you cannot really forward. This basically excludes using a purely additive model. You have to kind of balance the use of additive model and the multivariate model. Okay? So in the end, we actually come up with one particular model structure we call AMK. It's an additive multiplicative kernel method. And here I skip the detailed expression of that. But basically here this pseudo equation give you the sense of this method. Is we use different kind of kernel component, but for each one of the component has three elements in the multivariate kernel function. And the first two is always wind speed and wind direction. The third one is different environmental factors to be added in. Okay? And what it does here is each kernel element here capture the interaction. So we capture up to 3-factor interaction. Okay? Not more than that. Okay? But in order to incorporate additional factors, we use this additive structure. Therefore, they can become scalar. Okay, scalar. We tested the data by using up to 7 variables, but I don't really think that's the limit. You can use 10 variables, 15 variables. It shouldn't be a problem. Okay? So when we did some testing, data from 2 wind farms, this gives a kind of layout and different kind of wind turbine away from the mast and with a different distance. And the offshore wind turbine has 7 weather covers. So they have the VD known as this is turbulence, humidity, and wind shear of both the above and the below the hub height. But for the inland wind farm, there's only the sensor below the hub height, so there's no W sub A, subscript A, superscript A. On this particular inland farm, when it was operating at that time, the humidity was not measured. They want to measure that, but the sensor was not there yet. So we simply don't have the data. Okay. It's not like we don't believe that's important. Okay. And we do after-sample testing. 80% of the data are used for training, 20% data for testing. We can do a randomized tenfold cross-validation, and the result doesn't change much. The performance criteria, we use the root mean square error. We also use the MAE, the maximum absolute error, and that result doesn't really change much. For the density estimation, we use a continuous rapid probability score. This is one of the things being proposed in the statistical field to characterize how well you kind of capture the density part. The binning method, actually, the one recommended in the IEC standard, they are not really the planned binning method, just to take the wind speed input. They actually use air density to adjust the wind speed. So you get this wind speed prime. And when we compare this method, we use a subscript A indicator we compare is the air density adjusted wind speed binning method. Okay? The BVK is one of the bivariate kernel method proposed by another set of authors 4 years ago. And they only considered wind speed and wind direction, but they didn't really go further. Because I believe for them, the task or the difficulty at that time is they don't really realize how to scale up. By using the multivariate kernel, you cannot just simply scale up. Okay? By including 3 variables is a problem for them already. Okay? Of course, someone said, if you want to consider 3 variables, you already have BVK. You can simply do air density adjustment for that, and then use the new wind speed input for your BVK. You in principle consider 3-factor already. So how is BVK sub A by doing something just like that? Okay? So when using this 6 set of data to compare the things, and we use the binning method as a benchmark. The binning method doesn't produce anything related to the density, so we don't have anything to be compared over here. The benchmark for the density is from the BVK. And we find number 1, if you use the BVK A by using air density adjustment, if you look at the percentage, which is always used this as a benchmark, it doesn't always kind of help you. Okay? This is 32% reduction, this is 32.3% reduction. Okay? So it depends on how you're going to use that method information. If you don't use that information very well, it doesn't really always help you. For our method, by using the air density here, compare with the BVK. If the AMK method only uses the wind speed and direction, it's exactly the same as the BVK. By including the air density, will actually improve another 10% from the BVK method. Okay? And overall, from the AMK compared with the binning, the improvement is between 27% to almost 43%. Okay? And this is for the offshore wind farm. Okay? So the observation is really, when we compare this 6 set of data set for the case study, we also notice there's a different kind of noise level from associated with different kind of data set. The noise level can be noticed by the residual error from the Byon method. Okay, the first 3 data set actually has relatively small noise level. This particular inland wind farm has almost 50% more of the noise. Okay, and this one is almost like triple the noise level. The increase another 150% from the previous 3 turbine set. And when this kind of things happen, and we find the method, the machine learning method, for example, the Bayesian tree method, we call it BART, they sometimes kind of data structure when the noise is not very large. So when we compare our method, the AMT with the BART, for the first 3 turbines, they kind of neck to neck. But on the other 3 turbines, and when we compare our method with BART, we find we actually can beat them by as much as 18%. And one of the reasons is really because we believe that human intelligence constructing a particular model structure for AMK really kind of played an important role here. That guides through the learning process, which the BART actually have a hard time to learn by itself in the high level of noise. Okay, and this is one of the, we believe is one of the lessons learned in this particular study. And I'm going to skip this part. I'm going to just talk a little bit on this particular part. So we want to use the AMK because they control the power curve noise, the power curve accuracy to a great extent. So we said we can use this kind of method to do analysis to benchmark and which turbine is more efficient, which turbine is less efficient. And this is particularly needed in one of the things when people go through upgrade on the particular wind turbine. When we include additional device on the wind turbine, they want to know how much they generate additional wind and wind power from that particular upgrade. And the upgrade is expensive. Okay, so we use this as an element here as EMK, but we introduce another layer of calibration because EMK, when you use that, sometimes introduce a bias. Okay, in order to control that bias, we introduce a particular layer of calibration. We use the data, we call the self-calibration process. We use the training data and then 2 set of testing data and then do a self-calibration, and that will give us a more accurate quantification method. By using that, when we did a blind study with one of the wind farm operator, and basically in this particular case, the wind farm operator gave us 3 turbine data, and they didn't tell us which turbine has been upgraded and how many turbines have been upgraded. So there's 4 choices, right? 0, 1, 2, or 3. But they do tell us if there's upgrade happening is on that particular day. Okay? But it could possibly there's no of the turbine data has been upgraded. So they ask us to do a study with this kind of things. We use both of the Byon method and kernel method. And in the end, we tell them, from our analysis, we believe that turbine 3 is the one being upgraded. It's the one and only one being upgraded. And they basically confirm our analysis is correct. It's correct. And the reason we didn't really select the turbine 1 is really, the Byon method is not entirely useless, right? We kind of cross-compare with the Byon and the kernel. Right? The Byon method, if you can select the turbine 3 as the upgraded, you have to select the turbine 2. Okay? And we don't believe that this is a very pointed analysis result from the Byon method. And on the other hand, the Byon method here doesn't really point anything significant. So we made our decision at that point that the turbine 3 is the only one being upgraded. Okay? This slide basically illustrates, we kind of condense everything into 2 dimensions, and you can see by using the kernel method, you can see the difference between the before and after upgrade. By using Byon method, you couldn't see that. This is the last slide for this part, my part. So we also did another study with a German company, it's called Smart Blade, and they use a very different approach. They use a so-called power versus power approach, and they also use the high frequency data. And they don't use any kind of this kind of models. And when they have their result, and people ask them, how do you know your result is right? Right? When we have our result, people ask us, how do you know your result is right? So at one time when I presented my research at one of the conference, and the technical director of the Smart Blade noticed that and said, we want to do a cross study. Okay? So they provide us a four set of data, 4 pair of turbines. They said, why don't you do the analysis by using your method? Without telling me what the result they observed by using their method. Okay? So eventually we did our analysis. The analysis of our result is on the right-hand side, and the analysis from their result is on the right-hand side. And this is something they told us after we kind of released our result. So we find it's surprisingly consistent with each other. We believe that kind of present a cross-validation with each other. We actually is in the process of writing a paper to document this academia and industry case study, and hopefully to get a notice for this difficult problem in the industry. Any questions before Eunshin proceed to the next topic?
Then let me switch the gears to the reliability. So purpose being used a lot of operational data to evaluate the power performance. And this third part will discuss the reliability aspect of the turbine performance using the simulation data. So here there are 2 research questions, and these questions, 2 research questions are kind of both sides of coin. So the first question is, what is the failure probability given the resistance level? So as I said, so the failure probability can be expressed as this, like what is the probability that the output exceeds the resistance level L, and of course because this output depends on the weather condition, wind condition, this can be expressed as the integration of the conditional failure probability. And another question is that given the failure probability, or to satisfy this small failure probability, what should be the resistance level? So I'm going to discuss the first question and then followed by the second question. So as I said, at the design stage, we do not have a lot of data, so we use the simulation tools. And we consider an engineering system simulator producing output Y driven by the input X, which includes wind speed or turbulence intensity. And both X and Y are stochastic. Of course, these wind conditions are stochastic, and the density function of wind conditions is given. And even given the same wind condition, the Y is also stochastic. That's because this aeroelastic simulator developed by Unreal takes the stochastic computer model, which means given the same wind condition, inside the simulator, they also have several random variables which are unknown to the users. And because of those randomness inside the simulator, we observe stochastic load outputs. And the objective is to efficiently guide the simulation process to get enough samples in the tail of the output. And this is our observation. So the high density area of wind is mostly between 8 and 11 meters per second. So if, as I said, if we use the Monte Carlo simulation, then it will sample wind speeds from 8 to 11 meters per second. However, the large Y values are not observed in those areas. So if we consider the edgewise bending moment, then this edgewise bending moment tends to increase as wind speed increases. So if we want to observe large edgewise bending moment, then we need to focus our sampling efforts on this high wind speed area. If we want to focus on the failure probability under flat-wise bending moment, then we need to focus on mid wind speed area, which is between 10 to 15. And these are high, these wind speed areas that cause the large outputs do not necessarily agree with the original mass of the wind speed distribution. So we do not want to use the crude Monte Carlo simulation, but we want to use different wind speed distribution to guide the sampling process. And this is the idea of importance sampling. So this importance sampling idea has been already out there in the literature. So instead of sample wind condition from the original density P of X, we want to sample wind condition from the biased density. So for example, if we consider this flat-wise bending moment, can sample more wind speeds from this mid-wind speed area. Then the failure probability estimator will be given by this. So here we have, so this is like a combination of the average of the load exceedance output events. But instead of taking simple average, we have this likelihood ratio, Q over Q, because we sample wind speeds from Q, not from the original density. So we need to correct the bias. And people already, then the problem becomes, what is the optimal QX? Which QX should we use? And people already devised the optimal importance sampling density. They can minimize the variance of our estimation. And this importance sampling has been used widely in many applications. And broadly, they use this importance sampling techniques in two different types of simulation tools. The first simulation tools is the simulators with stochastic processes. So you can imagine like a queuing systems. Customer comes and they go through several, they take several services and then go out. For example, call center, when you call, then maybe you need to wait, and then your call can be transferred to some operator and the next operator. So in this case, this is the stochastic processes. So here the customer comes randomly, maybe the inter-arrival time may follow the exponential distribution, but we know the randomness, the exponential distribution, and the service time is also random, but we know the service distribution. So in this case, we know all these simulation processes. And in these stochastic processes, like Tiro Blaine, who is the famous researcher in this stochastic processes, he derived the optimal, he showed how we can devise the effective importance sampling density. Another simulator is similar to the wind-to-wind simulator, which takes the black box computer model. So in these stochastic processes, we know all the processes. However, in the second type of simulator, we don't know what's going on inside the simulator. So this is called black box computer model. But different from our simulator, most simulators take the deterministic computer model, which means given the wind speed, given the input condition, the output is deterministic. So if we use in this example, if we use the same X, which is the reactor operating condition, then we will observe the same output all the time. So our simulator does not belong to any of these categories. So we cannot use this existing importance sampling density. And the reason is because we use the stochastic black box simulator. We don't know what is going on inside the simulator. This simulator consists of hundreds of thousands of codes, and it has been revised for decades. So we don't know the exact procedure. And this simulator takes the stochastic computer model to even given the same wind condition. Inside the simulator, there are 8 million random variables to simulate the stochastic wind field. And because of that, given the same wind condition, we observe stochastic outputs. So here, this is the example of the edgewise bending moment. Given the same wind speed, you can see there are stochastic outputs. So essentially, this output Y is the function of wind speed and epsilon, which is the random variable, embedded inside the simulator. However, the problem is we only know the density of X, we don't know the density of epsilon. So we can control the density, we can control the simulation process of sampling X from some biased density, but we cannot really control the random elements inside the simulator because these random elements are hidden inside the simulator. So if we recall existing IS method, then this density, optimal density, it takes this form. And in our case, because we have two different random inputs, our density, optimal density should take this form. So here we have this probability density joint probability density function of X and epsilon. However, we don't know the density function of epsilon. So we cannot apply existing sampling density. So what we do is, so here we can only control X, not epsilon. So we will control X by sampling X from the biased density. And because of the randomness inside the simulator, we are going to run simulation multiple times at the same, at the sampled X. So suppose we sample M wind speeds, X1, X2, up to Xn. Then at x1, we are going to run simulator n1 times. x2, we are going to run simulator n2 times, and so on. And then we collect all the results. Then the question boils down to what is the optimal density and how many Ni we need at each sample we include. And this is the failure probability estimator. And by using this calculus of variations, we could derive the optimal importance sampling density and allocation. So this is the optimal sampling density, which is a little bit ugly, takes some complicated form. And this is the sampling allocation. And we call this method as the stochastic importance sampling density. And you can see that this density this density is the function of S of x, and this S of x is the conditional failure probability. So basically, we want to sample x from high failure region, where the conditional failure probability is high. So in this case, we run simulator multiple times at the sample x. But we can also run simulator just one time at each sampled x. So if you limit this Ni to be 1, then our optimal IS density will take a more simplified form. And we call this method as the stochastic importance sampling 2. So here we do have, we drive these two methods, and we want to see whether our methods outperform the existing methods. But as I said, existing methods cannot be applicable in our case because we cannot control epsilon. So we devise another benchmarking method. So here, this is the existing importance sampling density, which takes this indicator function, but we cannot use that. So we kind of devise new benchmark density that mimics this existing deterministic importance sampling density. So instead of using this indicator function, which takes 0 and 1, we replace this indicator function with the conditional failure probability. So if y is deterministic, then this benchmark IS density will be reduced to this deterministic importance sampling density function. So in summary, we propose two stochastic importance sampling density, which considers the randomness inside the simulator, and we compare the performance of our approach with this benchmark importance sampling density and crude Monte Carlo simulator. We apply this procedure to the area simulators, but however, we cannot really apply this method directly. The reason is our method here, our optimal importance sampling density needs this conditional failure probability. But this conditional failure probability, if this is known, we can just simply use the numerical integration. But this is unknown. So what we did is to approximate the conditional failure probability by using pilot data. So we run simulator. We take some small size pilot samples by running small scale simulations, and then we estimate this failure probability using parametric density function. So basically, we use the non-homogeneous generalized extreme value distribution, which this distribution has 3 parameters: location, scale, and shape parameters. But here we we model this location parameter and scale parameter as a function of the wind speed. So this is the estimated location parameter and scale parameter depending on the response type. And this is our research. So for the actualized bending moment, here you record this actualized bending moment. So this actualized bending moment increases as wind speed increases. And here, this is the blue is the original density, the Rayleigh distribution, the wind speed distribution. And this red is our optimal importance sampling density. And you can see that this Rayleigh distribution, this wind speed doesn't care about what its right bending moment looks like. So here, the mass is between like 5 and 8. However, our optimal density function takes into consideration of the actualized bending moment pattern. So this optimal importance sampling density suggests us focus our sampling efforts on this high wind speed region. So as a result, we could get more accurate results. So we run this procedure multiple times and get the standard error. And our standard error was about 0.002, but the benchmarking importance sampling density standard error was much higher than our case. And when we compare to crude Monte Carlo simulation, we could get remarkable computational effort reduction. So basically, we get this result with 1,000 runs. But if we use crude Monte Carlo simulations, then we need like 18,000 runs. So we could get like we only use 5 or 8% of computational resource that crude Monte Carlo simulation needs. For the flat bending moment case, here this is the flat bending moment. So our important sampling density, the mass is high under this mid-wind speed range. And again, our standard error is smaller than the standard error of benchmarking important sampling density. And we only use like 30 to 40% of computational efforts compared to the crude Monte Carlo simulation. And when we compare this result, flat bending moment result with edge-wise bending moment results, our results are not that remarkable. That's because flat bending moment's density here, the red, is somewhat overlapped with the original density. Edgewise bending moment case, this density is completely different because edgewise is high on the high wind speed area, but flat is high on the mid wind speed area. So the efficiency of this important sampling density really depends on the px, the original density function, and the shape of the output. Here in this we have this question. So the benchmarking important sampling density. So this benchmarking important sampling density also takes care of the output y. So it focuses on the high failure probability area because this is proportional to this conditional failure probability. So this is the result. So here the black curve is the original density of wind speed, px, and red is the benchmark important sampling density, and blue is our important sampling density. And red is also good because it focuses on mid-wind speed area, the high failure probability area. But nevertheless, the result suggests that our important sampling density reduced the estimation's errors to some extent. And the reason is this benchmark important sampling density is too confident because it mimics the deterministic important sampling density. So it backfires the performance in estimating the failure probability. But because we take care of the randomness, the stochasticity of the output, and also we solve this problem Euler-Lagrangian equation analytically, so we could get much better estimation results compared to the benchmark important sampling density. This is the second question. So another question we need to address is what is the extreme load to satisfy this failure probability. And we use this important sampling idea. And to solve, we get order statistics. So again, from the important sampling density, we get outputs. And we use this output to estimate this resistance level. And so here, when we use this subscript with the parenthesis, it means the ordered statistic. Y1 is the smallest output from all the simulation outputs, and YNT is the largest output from among all these simulation outputs. And here, this is the failure probability given the resistance level. But by replacing the resistance level with ordered statistic, we can get extreme load estimate. So here, when we use this kth smallest output, then this is the failure probability when the resistance level is 1K. So maybe we can show here. This is not updated. That's okay. So here, when we so this is the failure probability, and this is the resistance level. And when we use the second largest resistance level, this is the failure probability. When we use the third largest output, this is the failure probability. So when the failure probability is given at this level, like a 10 to the minus 7, then our resistance level should be this, somewhat maybe 5 largest the output. So in this way, we can estimate the extreme load. They can satisfy the pre-specified failure probability. And this is the result. So again, this is the failure probability, and x-axis is the actualized bending moment resistance level. And the red is the output from our approach using importance sampling density. Blue is the outputs from the Monte Carlo simulation, crude Monte Carlo simulation. And this output was obtained from 3,000 runs. So we run simulation 3,000 and get one trajectory. And we made 50 experiments, so we have 50 trajectories. So you can see that with the same computational efforts, we can estimate larger extreme loads. So in our case, if we want to estimate the extreme load that satisfy the failure probability at the level of 2 times 10 to the minus 5, then the extreme load to estimate ranges from 1.07 to 1.17 times 10 to the 4. But if we use Monte Carlo simulation, then Monte Carlo simulation cannot give the answers. It only gives the answer for the failure probability at the level of 10 to the minus 3. So we can estimate larger extreme load estimates corresponding to much smaller failure probability. And also you can see that the estimation uncertainty can be reduced remarkably. So here, this is the, this range measures the estimation uncertainty of the Monte Carlo simulation at the failure level of 10 to the minus 3 times 3. But if we use our approach, then our estimation ranges from this level. So we can reduce the estimation uncertainty significantly. If we combine, and then we combine all these 50 trajectories together, so we could estimate the failure probability corresponding to this 10 to the minus 7, and the failure probability was, the extreme load level was about 12,000 kilonewton meter for the edgewise bending moment. And if we, so this is the result we get from 150K runs, but if we use Monte Carlo simulation, we need 2.6 million runs. So it means we only use 6% efforts of Monte Carlo simulation. Now, here, we just use one static stochastic importance sampling density, but now we are advancing these methods by using adaptive importance sampling methods. So for example, we start from somewhat vague importance sampling density, but as we get more data, we can refine the importance sampling density to more narrow area. So we can, you can get more accurate estimates. And one of my students is going to present this research in the third session today. And another research area is to quantify the wake effects. Already some of the researchers presented wake effects in the 8 o'clock session. And these wake effects affect the turbine performance because when wind blows from, for example, south to north, these upstream turbines extract energies from wind. So the downstream turbines have less energy to convert. So the downstream turbines generate less power. Also, this affects the reliability because the upstream turbines generate additional turbulence. The downstream turbines suffer from increasing structural loss. So the reliability of the downstream turbines is less than the reliability of upstream turbines. So we are working on how to quantify this wake effects on both power production efficiency and reliability. And another student will present this wake effects in today's session. This is the last slide, and we have several papers. So if you are interested, then you can start. You can visit our website.
We have about 10 minutes left, and we can end the session right now and so you can feed the crowd for lunch. Or if you have any questions, then we're happy to answer the questions. Yes,
very nice tutorial. I have 2 quick questions. So the first one is the simulator only taking the wind speed as input?
The simulator, in this case, we only consider the wind speed as a case study, but we can also consider other input conditions like the wind direction, intensity, and And for off-shorter beams, we can consider the wave heights. Yeah, so we can consider multiple different conditions.
Yeah, so the second question is, you said that because of you don't know the distribution of the epsilon, so you cannot do the regular importance sampling.
Right.
Can you estimate the, can you infer the probability distribution of epsilon at first? Using the data you get from the simulator?
That's a good question. Yeah, maybe we can estimate the density of epsilon from the output, but we cannot really, that's the estimation, so that means we need to estimate the input density of epsilon, right? So we don't, theoretically, maybe we cannot guarantee the unbiasedness of reliability estimation when we use the estimated density function for the input variables.
I think it's going to be difficult. It's almost becoming a chicken and the egg problem. We need to run enough simulation to get the data to estimate the epsilon. The epsilon is not entirely additive because it's 8 million plus random variables embedded in the simulator. So some of this kind of randomness will kind of come into much more complicated form. So in order to understand the impact of that randomness, you need to run enough, high enough, this kind of things. But the very first question is you don't want to run high enough, right? Because you want to save time. So how can you do so without necessarily knowing too much about epsilon? Probably in the end, you still don't really know much about this. Right? I'm not doing the research, but I don't think that's an easy question to address. Any other questions? Okay, we still have 5 minutes. Hopefully that allows everyone to beat the crowd for lunch. Thank you very much for coming.